My name is Alondra Cano, and I'm City Council Member for the 9th Ward.
Monica Rose Flores. I'm the Executive Director of the Biggie Wing Community Development Loan Fund.
Dr. Joe Hobot. I'm the President and CEO of the American Indian OIC.
My name is Robert Lilligren, and I am the President and CEO of NACD, which is the Native American Community Development Institute.
We live in times where income inequalities are at their worst, and it is really important for us as policymakers to address that. And for the American Indian community itself, more than half of that population lives in poverty right now.
Essentially, it is my role to provide oversight on all the programs that are offered here at our organization.
I do a lot of behind the scenes, grant writing, meeting people, getting funding for our programs, but overall is making sure that the organization is fulfilling its mission to the community.
NACD came into being to address these kinds of disparities, but to do it from an asset-based perspective, to say we in the Native community, Native people, know what they need to do, they know what they need to succeed.
So the federal minimum wage has not changed since 2009. And already nationally, what we're seeing is that at least 30 different cities have decided to make their minimum wage higher than the federal minimum wage. And so it's very important for us to acknowledge the fact that in Minneapolis, over half of the Latino, African American, and American Indian communities here live in poverty.
A lot of our members having to take multiple jobs just to make ends meet. They're working 2-3 shifts, which is bringing in income to a certain extent, which allows them to maybe pay rent, pay their mortgage, pay their bills. But what it's also doing is preventing them from spending time with their families, their children, their elders, and their family.
The American Indian community is a small percentage of the larger American population, but even a small percentage can make the difference in an election. From the government, we should mobilize around candidates that share our values and that are looking to support our community, support these candidates into office, and then hold those elected officials accountable. Make sure we're engaged with them in designing policies or programs that will help us close our wealth inequalities.
Shuffling the deck. Has President Obama, in your opinion, done enough to reshuffle that deck to address economic inequality?
I will say, Alex, that when the president came into office, the deck was at the bottom of an abyss. I mean, I want us to understand and remember, I know it's great that we're a very forward-looking country, and I love that mostly, but I don't want us to live in a state of collective amnesia about what we were facing. You find out that some of what was said during the campaign might not be exactly true, and the deficit looked like it was going to be bigger in 1992 than had been predicted. And the same with President Obama. So he also has given the American people for the first time through the Affordable Care Act the promise of health insurance.
What we do is we work with them on financial literacy classes, home buyer education classes, wealth development, and asset purchases. Like I said, we have some atrocious rates, and I just want to see the federal policies and the trust with the government and treaties, and really just them going back to what they said they're going to do, just really getting that trust back with our treaties and government. So,
who do you think would have been the best candidate to help with this issue?
Well, personally, Bernie Sanders. I'm personally a Bernie Sanders fan.
Right.
I was very intrigued by Bernie Sanders and what he was talking about. I think my reason why I didn't support Bernie Sanders is that I don't believe his policies at this time could be legislated or enacted, that the differences within his own party precluded it from being accepted, and I don't know how he would be able to get Republicans on the other side of the aisle to agree to any legislative package and vote for it. It's not to say I didn't disagree with what he was proposing. It was wonderful, but it was so broad and expansive it bordered on fanciful. From the get, I've been a supporter of Hillary Clinton, Secretary Clinton. I believe that she can adhere to the best of what Bernie Sanders approaches, but has the ability to legislate that and bring it into reality, to work across the aisle. And that's the nature of our democratic system, isn't getting what you want, it's getting what you can get through the art of compromise. And really, when true compromise is affected, both parties usually walk away a little dissatisfied because they didn't get everything they wanted.
Ultimately, the community has to hold elected officials accountable, and so it is up to the community to continue to raise awareness about these inequalities, to come out to vote in the November elections, to ensure that the candidate that best supports an economic justice platform gets elected. It's important to get our friends involved, to get our families to come out and vote, to really have that civic engagement front and center, to make sure that candidates understand that they can't get away with their own initiatives, that they have to do initiatives based on what the people want. So looking at all the different cultural groups in Minneapolis and giving them the money to establish cultural centers where they can be the leaders of their own narratives and they can describe themselves and their communities through a cultural lens that is empowering and authentic. Because I think sometimes we rely on all these other cultural institutions to tell our story, but ultimately it is not people of color telling their own story. It is through somebody else's lens.
As soon as they realized what I was talking about was race, they just turned off. And you could just see it when you were in front of a group of people talking. They would just turn off and they didn't want to hear anymore. And I said, now, 15 years later, at least we can have the conversation. People aren't turning off as soon as you start talking about institutional racism and about these deeply embedded inequities in our system. And to me, that's progress. That's some progress. Yes, we haven't solved wealth inequality and the other disparities, but at least we have the space to seek solutions together.